our discussion. I'd like to begin with the first question that arises from my basic thesis, that is that we should regulate something within communication, in the area of communication, but in a way of harmonized recommended standards as first choice standards rather than obligatory ones. We would like to have a fewest possible number of those standards, and to what extent the Polish Standardization Committee can help with it. How could you help us to select those standards, how to develop a minimum of regulations? Without going into detail into technology, but from an administrative point of view, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to speak to yesterday's discussion, to what the president of the committee said. So first of all, our committee organizes standardization work, and we encourage this work. We would like to encourage this activity. We have approximately 300 technical committees with membership of interested parties, those parties who are willing to participate in standard development. That's the best platform for discussion in terms of what standards should be created and what they should contain. The Polish Standardization Committee has no influence over the content of standards. It's the interested parties, stakeholders, that create them. So if taking into account that these standards should be developed by international milieus, do you think it's possible for your organization to assist in such activities? Well, we do that all the time. If you look at the collection of Polish standards, 80% of Polish standards is an implementation of European standards. So this standardization work takes place on a European or international level, because a number of European standards is in fact an implementation of international level, and we are a member of international organizations, and so our experts can participate in work groups that are directly formulating the content of international and European standards. Thank you very much for this information, because I've heard questions from experts whether they could join the various committees. Now, question for Wojtek Pawlak. Now, you probably saw the introductory presentation on 5G. You saw a number of spectacular use cases. Now, the question is as follows. To what extent Polish networks, which have accomplished a number of pilot projects, it's not only a frequency is of interest here. Now, why are you going in the direction in which you're going, and which elements of business are particularly interesting, and why have you shaped your offering to date the way you did? Now, if you look at any standardization documents on 5G, now you can see a characteristic triangle. The top corner is enhanced mobile, or the Internet of Humans. It's just like now, but better, more. The other vertex is massive IoT, or the Internet of Things, your presentation. And so the possibility to connect devices, sensors, and the third vertex is the Internet of Services. I think I called it like that. Now, in 3GPP documents, forum standardizing mobile communication. These are highly efficient, low latency networks. So telecom infrastructure for special applications, for critical infrastructure for industrial users. Now, this is a place where we don't have wireless communication to date. Well, okay, we have Wi-Fi, Bluetooth. Somebody could object. But if you look at the scale of possibilities that the technologies offer, we are just at the beginning of the road. So 5G, as a matter of fact, for each operator, for the whole sector, gives an opportunity to enter a completely new level. So in our telecom industry, to find an unexplored area, it's a challenge. So this was also contained in your presentation. Industry, digitization, informatization of the industry is a challenge, an opportunity. It's happening, so we can see a great opportunity in that area for telecom. So you can see already the massive Internet of Things. Not only that, but also industrial solutions, IIoT, low latency networks, local processing. So you focused on industrial applications, and the other functionalities are not at the center of interest in terms of frequency use. And 5G networks are characterized by the fact that the spectrum can be used, the frequencies can be used in three different ways. You can implement three seemingly contradictory sets of requirements. So the first implementations have showed that solutions for the industry can be of very high quality, reliable, high efficiency, secure, low latency, even using LTE technology. So even though it's the future, but operators acting in Poland are preparing some offering solutions for companies interested in implementing them. So even though we're thinking about the future, we must also talk about the present day. So this is what I deal with up to 80% of the time of myself and my team. So I'll skip Alexander because I'd like to ask you a question that results from the answers to previous questions. Now, Mr. Jacek Pawłowski. Now, on a daily basis, you deal with a transfer of hard and soft technology from providers to manufacturing companies. My question is closely associated with my presentation. I saw you listen to it. I'd like to draw on your experience. How far are we from this kind of thinking in terms of standardized digital shells? And I know this is what I presented is not yet the case. How far are we to embark on this path proposed by German companies? Well, Jacek, you are absolutely right. 2 to 3%. If we translate that into Polish conditions, this is the way it is. We started to build the digital industry in Poland about 24 years ago. We have the first international companies. We also established a number of Polish companies that found their place in the supply chain. But right now, practically no Polish company is using Industry 4.0, understood as big data, integrated manufacturing management, data collection, processing, a connection to the global world, and using AI algorithms. Now the question is, what's the problem? How far are we? When do you think we could move on to that stage? Well, the two problems, finance. So we focused on building hardware organizations and equipping them with human labor, but we must move on to the next stage due to shortage of labor, and we must provide integrated management systems. It's costly, but probably money can be found with the help of the Polish Chamber of Commerce for Electronics and Communications and with the help of the government. But we built the electronics industry myself. We know how to do it. Now, the mentality of the managers, the executives of companies is not consistent with the requirements of today's world. How can we convince them to embrace these opportunities? Okay, we can give arguments of security. We are a nation of individualists, but we badly need cooperation. So I can see a fissure here. So you subscribe to this idea that cooperation is critical. Well, indeed, mentally, we are not fully prepared. Other Lebnik's main need for you. Well, indeed, if we compare our companies with China, we take European companies to Shenzhen to show them Industry 4.0. This is not the right path. We are no longer suppliers of cheap labor. Indeed, we need to convince company owners that without investment in integrated management systems, they will be excluded from the global supply chain because they won't be able to integrate with it. They will not be able to understand the requirements and needs of their customers. Thank you. As you channeled this issue towards adult learning, I must shift this question to Ms. Andrzej Soldati, who deals with preparation for a large adult learning system for the industry. I know you've been working only for a few months in this area. Now, can you tell us, please, what you offer right now for the industry so that, for example, representatives of the industry like Jacek Pawłowski could hear it and convey the message to hundreds of production plants so that we could have some interaction? Thank you very much for this question. Let me give you a short remark at the beginning. When I look at the list of standards for Industry 4.0, I can see that there is more than 100 standards in RAMI, reference architecture. Now, in the administrative shell, we have more than 100. Now, it's industrial internet, over 100. Now, Chinese standards developed by the Chinese committee, over 100. How can we maneuver this environment? How can we find benefits, avoid limitations, constraints? How can we approach these standards as an opportunity to join the international value chain in a secure and effective manner, and how, at the same time, we could avoid being overwhelmed by the standards? And as we heard yesterday about the German structure in terms of establishing testing laboratories, how we could translate this into the Polish market. That's obviously one of the tasks for the platform of the industry of the future. This platform was started recently. It's a government-run startup, a foundation that was created as a unique enterprise or to try and implement public-private partnership. The objective of the platform is to initiate projects for integration, and where there are no initiatives, we need to create them and introduce to the market. Now, one of the elements is lifelong learning, reskilling, So ensuring that we can unlearn the bad habits and embrace a new mindset. That's one of the large challenges. Indeed, a change of mindset. So the platform functions in the following way. The platform is preparing a set of recommendations Well, not by the platform itself, because it's not an independent entity. The platform brings together bottom-up initiatives, recommendations via work groups that we have set up. And we have a group on standardization, on the reference architecture, and based on these recommendations that reflect the opinion of the market, the voice of the market, speaking to the government, we are trying to exert some pressure on the implementation of certain particular solutions for Industry 4.0. On the other hand, the platform is a venue through which such initiatives are implemented in the market, especially educational programs in reskilling, rising awareness, etc. So the platform endeavors to develop a certain model, and then the developed solutions can be upscaled by digital innovation hubs, which over the coming months should exist in all provinces of Poland. So we also need to understand how to connect those hubs to Learning 4.0. Let me ask another question. Now, you mentioned several hundred standards. Sometimes we don't realize that we speak in prose, but those hundreds of standards, they're not all new. I think that Polish Standardization Committee could guide us here and show us which part of standards is essential in order to realize what is critical, and the rest will be adopted naturally as voluntary industry standards. So there is very important information for you that the shape of the final program in terms of adult learning significantly depends on the industry itself. Did I understand you correctly? Okay, let's stick to that, and I would need some time to carry this out. As you know, this event is organized by a number of our organizations. We need to send a word to the members of the Polish Chamber of Commerce so that they realized what is going on. Now let's move back to the administration shell. A question for Damian. Now you talked about the role of robots. They are absolutely critical. I wanted you to prepare a presentation. You showed us how many functions of robots have been defined in plants, but obviously this is specialized knowledge. Now the question is more general. How about these robots? Do they already have digital shells that could be adopted as seeds? So when you get robots like that, they then it is necessary for all other assets to acquire such shells, even if in evolutionary way. Is it possible?
It's by no means an easy question. I didn't say I would be asking easy questions. I believe so. In addition to this brief and brisk answer, let me point out to some other thing that was included in your presentation that has been reverberated here on numerous occasions, which moved me so much. We are talking here about a number of value chains and a number of technologies, even more regulations, hundreds times more of the latter, that control technologies and the things that we do. And therefore I think that robots and other technologies, other capabilities there's a challenge. because these are costly and lengthy programs, hard to implement, and to instill a change in organization. You need to be really apt not to create problems with the use of technologies. I understand it. Damian, return to my question. Can you see any natural elements? Because standardization makes sense. What is the standard? Knowledge transfer onto the paper, and this is how we share it. As long as it is not obligatory, it is inspirational, gives people ideas. If it creates barriers, it triggers the things that the president was speaking about. Can you see natural, universal, all-encompassing solutions to finish off the question on the shape of addresses or structural shape in administration shell in details? Can you see this practical rather than theoretical way of shaping it? When you look at a robot, you need to say yes or no. Can you see it or can you not see it? I think everybody's observed it. As I said before, what is most important for us is to focus on what we want to achieve, what kind of value we want to deliver, and start with the program, and then we cherry-pick the possibilities and technologies. What I think, what I know, is that this is happening here and now. This is a very good trend. The type of decisions influenced by hype are a thing of the past, kind of. Many suppliers and many players have realized this during the morning presentation on 5G. Let's start with what we want to solve, what kind of problem we want to solve, what we want to achieve. And the selection of tools to solve the problem, this is not the most difficult moment. It's the most important thing to understand what we want to achieve. We understand it. Let's carry on. And the last question to you. We've seen a wonderful presentation by Paul. So the question is, what has been presented as this hardware and software platform, and the software is interesting. I can see the basic operational system. Is this platform flexible enough not to worry that this upper tier that will be worked out in this tree will fit, can be overlapped over what is 5G standardization? Or will we need to build an interface between 2020 IMT specification and what develops in its final shape in Industry 4.0 over 5 years? This is the time horizon. When you look from the supplier's perspective, 3GPP standards, release 15 that has been closed, is the cornerstone for that. The industry and the operators, let me expand the spectrum, have problems foreseeing the future, especially when we speak about industry as such in more general terms. It's difficult to offer key services. Therefore, a supplier, whilst preparing equipment, follows the standards in order for the operator who works with the end client is able to provide services. I have operators experience. Rarely do they understand the needs of big enterprises, small and medium-sized enterprises. What is needed a dialogue in relation to what and how I produce, what are the needs with regards the network's values. This is the base we can build on, as the colleague said. Some of the things are based on 4G and LTE technology. 5G implementation is EMIB, swift internet access to expand prospective use, like 4K or 8K image transfer for science, distant learning. Coronavirus may push us to do so, but we are still waiting for the 16th release standards with smallest latencies, as 1 millisecond in case of our equipment. This might be important for control and management of energy and power grid nuclear reactors when decisions are made very quickly, and simple processing, 12 milliseconds reaction down to 1 millisecond reaction of the network margin. Release 17 will close massive IoT issues. Industrial networks comprise hundreds of thousands of sensors in one campus facilities, all kinds of information exchange in real time or almost real time. This great mass of appliances addressed is of utmost importance. But there is much more than 5G technology. There is AI, mobile computing. Not always can we address these centrally for whole Poland. If something is dedicated for a mine based on a central server in Warsaw, may not be as efficient as we would like to see it in the field. These must be geographically located. We need to finish. I need to wrap up on what you said. You heard me asking questions on practical applications in all the areas that you were discussing. And there is a lesson learned. For this business to close, we need to think about the time horizon. What kind of perspective and how can we foresee the future? If we can't do it in the right time perspective, you may face something I faced in my professional career, which was painful. I entered the company where I was supposed to integrate a number of telecom iOS systems, OSS systems from different suppliers, and there was no interoperability platform. Made it difficult for me to integrate the OSS platform to manage fiber optics on multi-color platform that I was implementing, so that I can manage the assets of the company from dashboard. It was almost 20 years ago. It was better to chuck the three very costly assets down the drain and buy one, because those that were buying before me were not given the chance. It was not silly of them. They were not given a chance to think about what will happen in 3 or 4 years' time, so that the money is spent in a standardized way. This lesson should be learned whenever there is network, and no longer are plants networks, but nodes on the networks. They either network themselves or die. It is important from the point of view of money if we don't think about it. What is the value of our company? How to externalize the values, couple with the network. If we think what is the cheapest now, the day after tomorrow we may think, well, it does not suit anything to couple with the best prospective client. The best way would be to go bankrupt and start from the scratch. I advise against. So I wish to close the presentation.